Hello, Dr. Koerich. Welcome to the International Dentist Podcast.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Koerich. I'm really honored to be here.
It is a pleasure and really looking forward for this conversation. It's been so long that we talk and we chat, and I feel I still don't know you, and I want to know everything about you, your history as a dentist, as a foreign trained dentist. So let's dive in. For those that don't know you, where are you from? And tell us a little bit about your story.
Sure. I'm from Brazil. I was born and raised in Brazil. And when I was 18 years old, 17, I got into dental school. In Brazil, just like many countries in Latin America, you don't have to go, and around the world, I think, you don't have to go to college before going to dental school. You basically go straight into whatever you want to do. And I got into dental school at 17, and then I came to the US to do a work abroad program during my summer break when I was in school, which is very common for Brazilian folks. And I kind of started liking the United States, and I did again and again. So I did 3 times, and basically right after my last time, I was about to graduate in dental school. I came back, and I was like, I gotta figure out a way to go there again. And I landed on a research assistant position, or some people call visiting scholar, postdoc research fellow. I've heard all kinds of names, where I did research at UNC in Chapel Hill, in the orthodontic department. And one thing led to another thing. Next thing you know, I'm more interested in the United States. And then I eventually came back and did my international dental program. And here we are today. I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I have me and my wife, she's an orthodontist, and we have 2 private practices here in North Carolina. That's a very short summary of my background. But
I feel like we just make a big jump, and I'm gonna dive into all the details.
yeah.
That was a great summary, by the way, from 0 to 100. But going back to those first experiences in your every year coming to observe it and work in the United States initially as a student, what was it that you saw that you felt I need to come back here?
So, being from Brazil, it's a very different culture, very different country, people, your ability to have things here, it's much easier than in my country. Also, it's much safer. No matter what people talk about the US, certain places, this and that, it's still so much safer. So, the combination of all these things together made me like very interested in the United States. Plus, you have great schools. Brazil has great dentistry, but the United States has a great technology. There are things that's really not easy for us in Brazil to have access to. Or we do have access to that, but usually, it comes to Brazil much later than comes to the US. So I think it's a combination of things that made me basically really like this country. And to me, it's a place of opportunity. If you work hard, you can make things happen. No, it's just like it. I think it's not easy. Don't get me wrong. It's not easy. But if you have your mind focused on your goal, and you work hard and you don't give up, you're going to make things happen for yourself. And I think that's the most interesting thing about this country.
Which I probably agree, even in our country, in Venezuela, is very similar. It feels there. You can work very hard and you still might not make it, or you might not even have the opportunities to make it. So I agree with you. I think this country really rewards the work hard. And even if you come with a different background, you don't have to be somebody's son, somebody's daughter, or having any specific connection. I think if you have good work ethics and effort, you can make a living and be good. And I think with dentistry, particularly, the access to technology and all these things are really fascinating. But when you made that jump into, graduated from dental school, when did you decided that what you wanted to do, or the entrance point was to research? Was it because you were already an orthodontist back home, or you did your orthodontist training here? How did that happen?
So great question. I actually wasn't an orthodontist. I was just fresh out of school. And in Brazil, the dental schools, the good ones, the public schools in Brazil are usually the best ones. Usually, that's kind of like the rule of thumb. And they are free. for you to go and study. It's really hard to get accepted into one of these public schools, but once you're in, it's free for dental school. On the other hand, specialty programs, almost 100% of the programs are paid for. You have to pay your tuition, and they're not cheap. But there were 2 programs in the country that were free, only 2 in the whole country. You have probably over, I don't know, 300-400 orthodontic programs in Brazil easily. But there are only 2 that were free. One was focused on cleft lip and palates, and the other one was orthodontics as a whole. The cleft lip and palate is also an orthodontic program, but it's mostly focused on cleft lip and palate. And the other one, it was free and it would give me a stipend. So it was a perfect combination for somebody like me who couldn't really afford to pay for a program, basically, you know. So to be a very competitive candidate, I need to basically, I have to be different. I have to be special. I have to be good. And I'm like thinking about what can I do to send my application and get these people attention. What is going to be the different thing that I'm going to do? A ton of people do research. A ton of people have good grades. A ton of people speak English. You know, what can I do that's going to be different than everybody else that doesn't have to be necessarily good, but different to catch their attention and be like, wow, I've never seen this before. And that's when I'm like, I'm going to go to the United States because I'm fresh out of school. Pretty much nobody does this. It's something that's very, you know, unusual. And when I mentioned that during my summer breaks, I came to study, not to study, I came to work in the United States. While I was here working, I was a busboy, I worked in a casino, I did all kinds of stuff. But one time I emailed a university in Southeast University in Fort Lauderdale, that's where I used to live. And I basically just inquired about the opportunity to do research for them. And to my surprise, they said, yes, we can make this happen, you know, and they asked me a bunch of information, but basically I was going to have to put a hold on my school in Brazil and stay in the US. And I didn't want to stop my school for a while. I wanted to complete. So I was like, well, I'm going to pass on this opportunity. But that answer, yes, that they gave me was like, oh, this is possible. So I came back to Brazil and I tried to connect with other schools. And that's when I connected with UNC. And I was like, hey, it was April of 2009. I still remember this. And I sent an email and I was like, hey, this is who I am, all these things in the email. And I'm looking to spend some time in the US, maybe watching some lectures in the dental school, just following classes, whatever is possible for me to do. You know, I'm up for that. Anywhere from 1 month, 3 months, I can go. And they answered me after a little while and they said, I don't have this opportunity for you. We don't do this in the school. However, we have this opportunity to do research and, but you have to stay at least 6 months. You know, they say like, but you have to stay at least 6 months as a bad thing. And I'm like, wow. You know, I was like, signing me up, you know, sign me up. I'm going. So it's interesting that first I found out that it was possible by just sending an email, you know, and then when I was really ready to come, I sent another email. It worked out. It wasn't the first email, just so people know. They didn't answer my first email. I had to repeat same email 3 times to the same person until they answered me. Okay, so try hard. And I came here, so they worked on my visa. And I came here and I did research and I published a lot of papers, pretty much everything in orthodontics. And then while I was in the US, I applied for the position in Brazil. I went to interview and I got accepted. And then I went different enough, you know, and all of my classmates, they were really, really good. But like out of everybody that applied, nobody had ever done what I did, you know? So that's how I tried to like grab their attention, doing something different, something unique. So I went back to Brazil and I did my master's and basically a residency in orthodontics in Brazil for about 2 years.
Okay. And when was it that you decided that after those experiences, because you came here with your main goal of becoming a stronger candidate to go there? When was it that
Yes.
you were like, I think I actually better go back?
So I started doing my research about how to become a dentist in the US while I was here. That was 2009. So I started learning about all the ins and outs, the different rules of different states and all that. And I even researched the schools that I would be able to apply to because they were either free or there was a tuition, but they would pay a stipend. And then I realized this is not going to be possible. But one interesting thing when you live in the US, and people think that I'm joking, I'm not joking when I say that, but if you want to um, marry an American person, you're probably gonna, find them living in the US, not while you're in Brazil or Venezuela. And not that I wanted to necessarily marry an American person, but while I was here, I ended up meeting somebody because I was in the US. And we ended up staying together and we're married now. But basically, when I was in Brazil, we dated long distance for a little while. And I didn't know it was going to work out. She didn't know it was going to work out. It was a long shot, but we kept this relationship going. And in the meantime, I was already like thinking, okay, so if I'm going to go there, I'm going to have to become, a dentist in the US. So I start preparing my application and hoping for the best. And it worked out pretty well that by the time I finished my orthodontic residency, about 2 or 3 weeks later, I came to the US. And then we've been together since then, living in the US.
That's nice. That's a sweet story. But at the end, it worked out. So you have a very strong reason to come back.
Yes. Yeah. So that was the main reason why I came back. And we talked about this before and like what my life would have been if, we didn't get married or if I didn't meet her. And most likely what I would have done, I would still come back to the US, I believe, but I would probably have followed the PhD track. I never did a PhD and I'm not interested in doing it anymore. But in Brazil, it's very common to do a specialty master's and then follow with a PhD. And with all my connections in the US, I have a feeling that I would end up doing a PhD in the US and I would probably become a professor in the United States. That's probably where I would have gone, because that would be the simplest path for me and more stable with small expenses. You know how it works, how school can be, have all the barriers, financial barriers and all that. So I think I'll end up being a professor at least for a while. But I'm happy where I am, much happier now.
But I guess for those that are listening to us that have no idea how this works and they're learning the paths and going through navigating the system, I think a main barrier, and I hear this, it was the same for you that it was for me, was money. I just couldn't say I'm going to pick a program out of my choice that because I had a limited budget and I couldn't just afford pretty much anything. And many times, even what you can afford, you have to prepare very, very intensively to become a good candidate for us. I think about all the things you did to be a good candidate for your program in Brazil, all of the investment, right? Because even those 6 months that you came here, with or without a stipend, you probably will have to pay some life expenses. You'll have to either pay rent or like there's still an investment, both time and money investment in anything we plan. So something that I see most people that are successful here doing is exactly what you did, having that vision of I'm going to prepare this for the future, not thinking that things are going to happen magically or thinking that are going to happen out of luck. It's a combination of hard work, effort, and insist several times. And when you mentioned the email, I laugh a little bit because I thought about it, what I did, which was very similar. And nobody ever told me I have to send emails like crazy. But of course, back in 2010, all I could think of is let me just email people, introduce myself and offer my help or whatever it is that you want to offer. But of course, first email out of 35, you're not going to get any response. Then 35 becomes 65, then 65 becomes 100, and then you end up losing count of how many emails to how many people have you sent until at some point you get some answer, right?
Yes.
So those answers are the ones that open the little doors. And for you, that's like what I'm hearing is exactly what happened. So when you chose to do the international program, so you went to basically, for what people that are familiar with this, will be an advanced standing program, right? So was it a 2-year program?
So it was a 2-year and 4 months program at VCU. Today, they don't have the same program anymore. Now it's 3 years which is much more challenging because time is money. The sooner you graduate, the better, because you can start making money. Back then was 2 years and 4 months. Basically, the initial 4 months is what they call the pre-program. You have like a very condensed 16 weeks of a bunch of exams and tests and this and that. And if you pass everything, you basically join the third year dental school class. And that's how I did. It was a great program. They did have quite a bit of lectures, but very, very hands-on. Saw a lot of patients, did lots of fillings, gosh, I don't even know how many extractions. I like to do the extractions back there. Simple ones, not wisdom teeth and stuff like that, but the simple one that I liked, it was cool. So I really like that program a lot. Great professors, great facility. Richmond is a great city. But nowadays it's 3 years instead of 2 and 4 months, which kind of makes a big difference if you think about it, It's not the end of the world, but it does make a difference.
Yeah. So for those that are thinking maybe the other paths, either because they don't have the finances to spend or they don't have the citizenship status that allows them to get a loan, or that are planning to apply to programs that might be a little bit competitive and they might not be in the right state. When you talked about potentially being a professor, that path, staying in academia, what would you say for the people because you probably know a lot of others that have gone into that path? Do you think what are the pros or cons of that path considering professional life?
So I really like the academia path, which is kind of like what you did. Not necessarily all exactly the same, but like sort of, right? You have some academia involved in what you're doing. What I like about academia is that first, the main barrier for people, like you said, is finances. You have to figure out a way to cover for your school. So if you can't afford out of pocket and you cannot go to a school that's free or that maybe charges you a tuition but pays you a stipend, if you cannot go to one of these options, you basically with your hands up high. So then you gotta go find a co-signer. How are you gonna find a co-signer if you live in Venezuela or Brazil? Unless you have a family member here. So you're really, really tight to what things that you can do to your options. So the academia path, I think, is a great path because basically you're gonna get paid, and you're gonna get paid probably well compared to what people would make in their own countries. Probably very, very well. Second, if you don't have a green card, that's a path for you to have a green card. Third, what I liked about the US is that there's no written rules, but a lot of things can happen. Nobody ever said that I could apply to UNC. There wasn't a position available for me to do research. I tried and it worked out. Just like people can try to talk to their dean or whoever is responsible for things at school and try to find a faculty track for you to get your DDS or DMD while you teach. It's not possible everywhere, but I've heard plenty of stories where people were able to accomplish that. I have friends who are doing this now. I have friends who are doing specialty through that. They are orthodontic professors and they're getting their specialty in the US while they teach. So that's a very, very, let's say, low cost way of getting things done. Low cost from a finance standpoint. From a time standpoint, it's going to cost you. It's going to cost you time, and it's probably going to cost you a lot of time. But at the end of the day, you can put your head down and sleep knowing that you don't have a ton of debt and you don't have anybody to pay back, basically. So I really like the academia path for a lot of people. Now, the problems with the academia path, like I said, you're paying with the time. It's not necessarily finances, but this time. The second problem to me is that you are very limited in your growth in academia compared to private practice. Basically, the cap, the salary cap for academia is very limited. I know plenty of people, and it's pretty stable, the salary, especially if you don't have any degree in the US. If your degree is only foreign, basically the schools know that there's nothing you can do to work in private practice. So they're going to negotiate what's better for them and your hands are tied. So, I know people that won't make as much as they could because they don't have an American DDS or a specialty degree or anything like that. Um, so that's one limitation. And what else I can think here? Well, I think to me in particular, I know plenty of people who go into academia because their research is very strong. But it's important for people to know that many of the research is done in the United States, at least from a dental school level. They are supported by grants. And it's important for people to know that you have to apply for these grants and get these grants. And sometimes if you don't get a grant, you could be out of salary. So I know plenty of people, if their grant is going to run over, they're going to run out of money and they don't get a new grant, they go into that pressure of like, I have to find something. So that's another negative. But also if you have your salary paid by the school, that's a different deal. But some people, and I know quite a few people who had like 20% of salary paid by the school, 80% by grants, so they always have to be looking for the next thing. So that's another negative. But overall, I think that's an excellent path for plenty of people. And that's probably what I would have done.
Yeah, I'm glad because you touch on very, very important points and what is really the cost value or the cost benefit. You don't invest money, you invest time. And that might depend upon also on everybody's specific condition, but also what they did in their country. I feel many times people want to follow a path just because they feel it's more predictable in a way. Perhaps you probably have the same thing, like people reach out to you, I want a faculty position. And when I check what they have done, we discussed, we talked about, they haven't even done teaching assistant. They haven't been involved with any research. So they haven't been involved with academia in their countries. So it's kind of difficult to even apply or prepare a CV for a position for something that you have never done and why you're going to come and say this is now the path for you. So I agree with you. I think it's a perfect path for many. But for others, if you really want what it is, the fast track in a way, or the most predictable track, it is the most expensive one, sadly, or the one on which cost benefit has to place differently, but going directly like you did, an advanced standing program will give you the freedom sooner and you have the work independence and you will have no cap in terms of how much you could make or how much you work because you're on your own boss, which is I think the beauty of
Absolutely.
a fidel career here. You're smart.
That's priceless.
So I don't know. I know that phase for business on. How did that happen? And what talk to me about why you decided to own a practice now, two practices, and how did that happen? And were there any challenges in that process as a foreigner?
Oh, plenty of challenges. Let me rewind back to my 17, 16-year-old self. I knew that whatever I was gonna do, I didn't want to have to respond to anybody. I knew that. And that's kind of like one of the reasons why I went into dentistry. It's because it was an office where the doctor works and the doctor is in charge of pretty much everything, So I'm like, that sounds pretty cool. A lot of people in the US go into dentistry because of money. It's one of the best professions financially in the United States. In Brazil, dentistry is just like any other profession from a financial standpoint. Average dentist in Brazil actually probably makes about $1,000 a month. Average dentist in Brazil. So I went into dentistry because of passion and because I want to be my own boss. So when I was out of school in the US, I was like ready for it, but I had student loans, I had that, I had this and that. So first I got a job. I got actually two positions working as an associate in two different practices, and I was driving quite a bit. One was like 40 minutes away. The other one was an hour and 30 minutes away. And I've done that for a while, but as soon as I was out of school, I started looking for areas where I could open an office. And in the meantime, working as associate, very soon I realized that I don't have any control over things. I want to buy this specific bracket. Well, they don't want to because it's too expensive. I want to take this day off. Well, you're going to have to work, and my bosses were pretty laid back about certain things, but there were things that like Hey, I don't want to work with this staff. She doesn't know what she's doing. Get me somebody else. Well, I can't get somebody else to work with her. That was very, very challenging. And in the very beginning, I'm like, I have my own office. I have to be in charge of these things. And I started building my office. So I got out of school in 2017, May 2017, when I graduated. And by July, I received my license because it takes a little while for you to get your license. And in August, I think I started looking for places to start an office. It took about a year. And then on August 2018, I opened my practice. August 22nd, 2018, I opened my practice. But I continued to work as an associate because we need to have an income. Practice, brand new practice, we don't make money. We actually lose quite a bit of money. So I continued to work as an associate, but I cut back my hours more and more as the time went by, to the point where I am now that I can say that I don't work as an associate right now. I'm just covering in one office where I used to, because they couldn't find anybody to replace me so far, and I put my notice about 8 months ago. So I'm basically helping them out so the patients can have continuity of care. But I put my notice about 8 months ago, and I used to go 2 days a week. I go now like 1 day a month. Of course, the patient pool also shrunk quite a bit because I got a lot of people out of braces. I don't put anybody else in braces. So that's the only reason I still do that, but just to help out the patients. And for those of you, I get this question a lot. Is it going to be easy to find a job when I get there? Guys, I'm telling you, you guys listening us here, I'm trying to quit a job and I can't because they cannot find somebody to replace me. So let's put that way. Okay. Just come here, get the degree, you're going to find a job. So I worked as an associate for about 3 years, to the point that I felt comfortable dropping my job. I was planning on dropping my job right before pandemic started. That's when it was like, I think it was January. I started talking to my wife. We were hitting the numbers in our practice. We're being able to be stable. And I was like, well, I think it's time to quit. And then 2 months later, I was ready to go and put my notice. Pandemic hit. And then I'm like, okay, what's going to happen in my office? Nobody ever lived through this before. So I was scared. Everybody was scared. Offices shut down a month, 6 weeks. So I kept the position. I kept my position as associate for the next 6 months. But then it got to the point where I'm like, okay, everything's going well, time to quit. And then I put my notice. But I've been helping out because I feel bad if the patients don't have anybody to see and they, are just embrace it. So I help out. It doesn't cost me anything. I go there once a month and I take care of them. So it's good. It makes me feel good too.
Mm. And I think what you said is so true. There's so many, I receive so many calls a week, people asking me, can you come work with me? I'm still looking. And I know people look, I know that sometimes also people look for the right fit. And that's something very particular, especially when you're either positioning because you want to sell, and there will be certain people looking for something very specific. But there's so many job opportunities, especially if you're willing to go to not necessarily far, far away from the city, but not to very, very popular cities. You have even more opportunities because especially after COVID, so many people retiring, they're even retiring young, leaving practices on the communities or reducing hours a lot, and they just want somebody younger coming to work. So I agree with you. I feel the investment is worth it, even if it's a scary investment because nobody wants to have loans. Nobody wants to get in debt, but it's totally worth it. I mean, the Americans do it and they do it even more than us. It's just part of their culture, right? So they go to college, they get in debt, they just do it. They don't even think about that. It's just part of life, and they do it for everything they do in life without any fear. And the bank just like borrow them money like crazy, borrow us money like crazy, just because they know that we will have the ability to repay. Because if you work hard, there's still going to be an opportunity. So I hear you, and I always invite people to say, you know what, if it's going to take you, if you want the fastest route, go to advanced standing, prepare yourself for advanced standing. If you're okay staying a little bit longer, if you want this job security and if you need the green card, then you probably will have to go more into the university route if you can. Or
Mm.
if you have a partner that you could get married and get all set in that aspect, but it's definitely worth it. All the efforts are worth it. And I guess you're witnessing them.
100%. 100%, yes. And today I'm very, very lucky to be in a position where both my wife and I work in offices. So we work in two different offices. But I think that the best thing about life in the United States now as a dentist is that it's very stressful, yes, sure, but I have a lot more flexibility than I would ever have as a dentist in Brazil, you know? And I'm not even talking about money or anything like that. Certainly in the US can make a lot more money than Brazil. But the freedom that I have, the way that the office operates here with a team, it allows me to see more patients in one day and have an extra day, let's call it off. It's not necessarily off because there's a lot of admin work to do, but I can do admin work from my home. I can do from a hotel. I can do from anywhere, you know? So many times I go on a trip or a long weekend, I have to stop my trip to run payroll. Yes, it happens, but I can still go on my trip for 4 days straight, which is something that in Brazil, I know that this wouldn't happen often. And here I have the flexibility of doing that. In fact, every now and then somebody wants to look for a job and we want to hire somebody. When people ask for 40 hours, we're like, it's hard to give 40 hours because our office is not open 40 hours a week. You know, certainly I need one person answering the phone 40 hours a week. I'd like to have that, but I don't need two people 40 hours a week. So every time somebody asks for 40 hours, it's a challenge because I don't have all these spots available for 40 hours. You know, people want to work 3 days a week. Great. I have plenty of spots available for 3 days a week, So that's something that's very, very different. I don't know how it's in Venezuela, but in Brazil, most of dentists that I know, they'll work Monday through Friday, maybe Monday through Saturday. It's very common.
And it's not the same style as here. And I'm going to ask you more details so you could explain how your practice operates. But this stem on how you have a team. I feel here we have a hygienist, we have assistants. I've trained my assistant to do so many things that I could have 3 patients. I always double chair, and sometimes even up to a third chair if needed. And as a prosthodontist, I can imagine even as an orthodontist, I know Pito, they see, I don't know, 40, 60 patients a day.
Yes.
I don't know. How is it a typical day in your practice? So what's going on simultaneously?
So my practice is quite a bit slower than the average practice, I would say, and that's because the way that I want to run things. I don't think there's a right or wrong. It's just a personal preference. So I see about 40 to 50 patients a day.
And that's
So
average.
that's lower than average. Yeah, I would say that probably average orthodontic practice fees 60 to 70, probably. But you know what? That doesn't make me happy. So it was a choice of mine. Maybe in 10 years, I'll be more used to it and I'll be fine. But today, I feel really, really happy with 40 to 50 patients a day. I started fresh out of school. I was like a 30, 35 patients a day. It was like plenty. But then I started to train the assistants. And it got to the point where the assistants were like reading my minds and doing the things. So the way it goes is like, if you see 30 patients, but you're having to do a lot in each patient, it drains on you. That like takes all your energy away and it's hard and you have to focus and you have to pay attention to what you're doing. So it's really hard mentally. But the more you train your assistants, more they can think about, like some of my assistants, the one that's been with me a little bit longer, I mean, they know what's the next wire that I'm placing. They know when I'm bonding a bracket on a tooth that's like coming in or not. They know all that by now. So I started to train the assistants and get to the point where I'm like, wow, 30 patients a day, that's boring. I mean, I need more activity here. I need something else going on. And then I jumped to 40 to 45. Now that's my number. If I have trained assistants that I can rely on, not like somebody that I've never seen before, but my assistants that I can rely on and know how they work, I'm really comfortable with 40 to 50 patients in a day. I have 5 chairs, but I usually run 4, only 4 with active patients, or sometimes 3. Because one day a week, I only have 3 chairs running usually, and the other day I have more assistants that have 4 chairs running. And I don't like to run all 5 chairs with patients all the time because we have emergencies in orthodontics. We have a lot. So I like to have a chair free for if somebody needs to come, we'll sit them there, we'll take care of them, and the day doesn't go crazy. I'm all about peace of mind. I'm all about having a good day. Make sure that the patients are seated on time. Make sure the patients have a great experience because especially now with so much competition, and everybody focusing on numbers and making more money and doing this and that, I focus on taking care of my patients. And then as a result of taking great care of them, they're going to appreciate that. They're going to tell their friends and their friends will come. That's the bottom line. That's it for me. Take care of the patients, do the right thing for them, and then things will happen for you. So I try to have a slower day, slower pace, but that makes me happy. And at the end of the day, you want to be happy because there are a lot of stresses related to running a business, especially an orthodontic business where you're dealing with people's, not orthodontics, dentistry as a whole, where you're dealing with people's health, you know, and you want to make sure they have a great experience and you do the right things for them. So the last thing that you want is to have more patients than you can handle and then not be able to do things right. So I highly encourage people to do what's good for their mind rather than their pockets.
Mhm. And of course, every specialty works and operates differently. So I don't know if you had any chance to shadow anybody, but I always suggest to people that come here to even understand the American dental system to shadow some offices. And you could shadow a specialty office, and each specialty is going to operate differently, and everybody is going to have their system. But even general practices are very different, and they're different to our countries. So from the business perspective, they're different, and from the operational and health perspective, they're different. Because I don't know how it's in Brazil. In Venezuela, we're not so used to the assistant having so many responsibilities because they don't even have license for it. Right? So even we don't have hygienists. I don't know if you guys have the figure of a hygienist. Hook. No, we're the hygienists.
Same thing.
Yeah,
We're the hygienists.
we're the hygienists. We're the everything. So definitely, I hear you, and I feel doing that, caring for the patient will also bring you back business, no matter what. But I do know that you also care about international trained dentists as well that you wear, and I know that you do amazing. I don't know when, what extra time, but talk to us a little bit about your other business.
So my other business is named Revalida USA, and it's actually I set up a whole what is it called, umbrella company, bigger company that takes care of the course. It's called Dental Academy USA, and I started during the pandemic because the office shut down. I did not know when I was gonna go back to work, and like you're doing the international dentist podcast, I had a blog in Brazil as a hobby. And the goal of my blog was to talk about orthodontics, and I wanted to be cool talking about orthodontics. And in the very beginning, I didn't even know what I was doing. I was just writing stuff, trying to publish it. I know how to put stuff there, get help from my brother to publish things. And then I'm like, I don't know what I'm gonna write. So let's write about being a dentist in the US. It's not orthodontics, but let's try to do that. So I wrote a few things about it, published on Facebook. Next thing I know, it went viral. Whatever that was back then, tons of people sharing, tons of people liking, commenting, and this and that. And people started getting in touch with me. So I started helping people out. And 3 people actually got to the US. One got accepted to BU and then to UConn for ortho. The other one got accepted MedStar for ortho straight. And the other guy got accepted to University of Pittsburgh and then Maryland Orthodontics. And I helped them, but for like these 3 that I helped, there were like more than 30 people who sent me an email. I took a ton of time to answer them, and they didn't even say thank you, and they never did anything. So I kind of started to like, I'm not gonna do this. I'm gonna stop with this thing here. I'm gonna keep my orthodontic stuff, and then I just kept publishing stuff. But the most accessed publication was my international dentist publication. So that's when I first realized they were not even my clients. They were just people out there. It's not that it was a business, but that gave me a business insight for my own office. You have to offer what people want, not what you think it's cool. No. offer what they want, not what you think is cool. So what they wanted to learn about how to be a dentist in the US. That's what they wanted. So pandemic hit, and then I had this whole list of people who got in touch with me, and I got nothing else to do. And I'm like, "Hmm, let's see here. What can we do with our free time? I have 2 kids at home, but I'm gonna get bored pretty fast." So I started to get in touch with some of these people, and I was like, "Hey, I'm thinking about starting a course about becoming a dentist in the US. Would you like to sign up? I don't have anything ready yet. This is gonna be the fee." Back then, who was starting was like $400, $500, something like that. "You're gonna have to trust me that I'm gonna deliver this. I don't have anything right now, but you read my post. If you trust me, great. If you don't, I understand. No hard feelings." So I got in touch with quite a few people, and 2 people signed up. I had nothing. I had nothing. I had my degrees. 2 believers. They were one specifically. One signed up for a 1 hour consulting with me. The other one was like, "I'm gonna pay the whole thing, and I'm gonna whenever it's ready. Great, we'll do it." And her name is Michelle. She lived in the US, and she was the most important person, I think, for me to get this going. And then I got my iPhone, bought a tripod, went to my office, did PowerPoint lectures, and started recording the lectures one after the other one. And then I decided to launch like my first class. And then the first class I hit 17 people. The first believer plus 16. And the guy that paid the consulting, he also signed up. So I did everything except editing the videos. I had a video maker who was editing the videos for me, but everything was done by me. Then I kept doing stuff, and then second class it was like, I don't know, 27. Third class, 27. Fourth class, over 10 people, which happened during the pandemic, so their numbers were pretty low. So now we're almost at 100 people. We're almost at 100 people. I have my YouTube channel where I have over 70 videos, I think, over 80 videos where I explain a lot of things. People can learn a lot, but it's all in Portuguese, except our interview in English there. Yours the only one that's in English. So I have over 70. You're special. So I have over 70 videos, and I have over 26 hours of content in my course. Because what I was doing was like I was answering each person individually, and I'm like, I'm telling these different people the same thing over and over. I can make this in a way that, don't ask me, just watch my videos. So I create a step by step before coming to the US. What are the jobs that you can have? What can you do when you're coming here? If you don't have a green card, what are the ways that you can step your foot in the US? How do you apply for ACE? How do you tips about the boards? You name it. I have everything from like getting to the US until you sign your first contract as a dentist, because there's a plenty of stuff that people should be aware of when they're signing a contract. It's very tricky. I'm not a lawyer, but I do give them my experience of what happened to me and my wife. So I share this with them. So I have everything from start to finish, how to become a dentist in the United States. And I started this about a year and a half ago, and I have now almost 100 people.
Nice. Isn't that amazing? What do you feel is the main challenge that foreign trained dentists that you work with have when they're joining this adventure?
Without any doubt, the main challenge is the financial aspect of the course. That's without a doubt. I like to say that first, you need to decide like what do you want to do in the US? Because you can be a dentist, you can be a hygienist, you can be a faculty, you can be a specialist, you can be a researcher, you can do plenty of things that's still connected to dentistry. You gotta decide what you want. Then you gotta make a financial plan for that. And that's where most people stop because they don't have a financial plan. So that to me is the most difficult barrier for a foreign person, and goes back to what I was joking in the very beginning. Well, you have to be in the US to, not you have to be, but your chances are higher to find an American person if you are in the US. Well, your chances are higher to get a job in a university if you're in the US. Your chances are higher to find a spouse if you're in the US. Your chances are higher to have a job that's going to be sponsored if you're in the US. Your chances are higher to find a co-signer for your student loan, which plenty of people have found a call sign while in the US. They're not family members, you know? Even people, one huge thing that amazes me, the connection that they have is a program called Au Pair. Have you heard of it?
Yes.
So somebody come from another country, usually female, they come to be a nanny. And how many times have I heard about a nanny having a host family who absolutely loves them and are like, you know what? I'm gonna sign your loan here. I'm gonna take care of you. They are not responsible for the loan itself, of course, unless the other person doesn't want to pay, then it's a problem. But basically they need a co-signer, and your chances are gonna be much higher if you step your foot in the US. So the financial barrier is the most difficult thing to me. But if people step a foot in the US, things change. Things can change. You know, don't sit in your country waiting for things to happen because likely they won't. You know, likely they won't. So that to me would be the most complex thing. Now, let's say that money is not a problem or the person have the ability to get a loan or something like that. I think the second problem is that people underestimate the application process. They underestimate. I don't know how it's in Venezuela, but in Brazil, you take an exam. Nobody cares your background. Nobody cares if you were in the jail day before or if you're the smartest guy in class. You take an exam. If you pass, you pass. That's it. In the US, it's not like that. It's not like that. You have to prepare. You have to do a personal statement. You have to prepare your CV. You have to do a whole application. And then if everything goes well, then you have an interview. So it doesn't matter that you're the best person on paper here, but if you go to the interview, you don't know how to speak English, you cannot look at somebody in the eye and carry a conversation. And it doesn't have to be perfect English, guys. Just so you know, my English is not perfect. I've been living here for 8 years now, 9 years, 9 years in March. My English is not perfect, and that's fine. But you have to be able to carry a conversation. You know, even if you make grammar mistakes and all that, it's fine. But you got to be able to carry a conversation. You know, you can't just sit down and freeze when somebody asks you something. So people underestimate the application process from like a paperwork standpoint, and they underestimate the interview. So they think, oh, it's the interview. I just gotta, do the talk and this and that. No, it's not like that.
And the amount of hours, and
Not like that.
so glad you mentioned that, because I know that we talked about this in the past and how people reach out to us like maybe a couple of days before the interview. Oh, I got an interview. Do you have any tips for me? It's like, I'm gonna have a baby tomorrow. Do you have some tips for me? Like, it just doesn't happen like that. It requires so much preparation. And I always make the example of the national boards. I generally ask the question back, how long did it take you to pass the national boards? And then they'll be like 1 year, 6 months, 2 years, whatever. Okay, the same amount of time and effort that you put to study for your boards, you'll have to put to prepare your application, which is not only the paperwork part, many times requires for people that have no experience on certain things that you actually get exposed to certain things. Perhaps some people want to apply to a master's in public health and they have no volunteer experience, right? So they had no way of justifying that they want to do something because they don't have it on their CV. So then they just take it lightly. And then same thing with the interviews, especially for a foreign person. As you said, we don't need perfect English. I don't speak perfect English myself, but you have to be able to carry on a conversation, to answer questions in a format that is not natural for us. And I think that's probably the main challenge. And that's why we need training. And training many times is almost like acting, right? So you have to act and pretend, and not that you're going to be a fake person, but you need to be a refined version of yourself to be able to now take that interview into a final result, which is hopefully the lucky one that you're expecting. But how many people get interviews and they missed an opportunity? And what they don't know or they don't understand is that they get a sticker of second cycle application, or when you want to apply again to the same program, especially we know certain programs that are very competitive, either because they get a stipend, etc. They might get one shot. They might get a second shot, but the second time you really have to be even much better than any other candidate, because they want to know what do you do different from last time to now. So it's even harder.
Yeah, to step up your game.
big time. And I think every cycle just becomes harder. So I tell people, don't apply until you're ready. I have people that come to me, I just want to apply. I just want to save time and go. You're not ready. So many people are not ready and they're not taking the time to prepare accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
If I
And
were to ask,
I think,
sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
No, I just was thinking from the same thought. If I were to ask you, what do you think will be a minimum amount of time for people to prepare for their application process? What would you advise?
You're including like not the board preparation, right? Just like paperwork and stuff. I would say that it depends how strong is your CV, how many things have you done. If you have done these things properly and you have a fairly strong CV, and by very fairly strong CV, there's so many different things that you can do to have a strong CV. You don't have to do everything, guys, just so you know, you don't. I never had a single day of clinical experience in my life and I got accepted into a program, just so you guys know. Never worked as a private practitioner before I got accepted. So, but if you have some things that are strong in your CV, just for you to put together personal statements, letters of recommendation, all these kind of things, at least 6 months. At the very least 6 months. Okay. Now, if you identify things that are weak on your background and you want to improve them, then you have to account for that time. So if you want to start doing volunteer work, you're not going to do 2 weeks of volunteer work and think that that's going to make your resume amazing, your CV amazing. You're going to have to do that for a while. If you want to do shadowing, you're going to have to do that for a while. If whatever you want to do, you want to show some consistency there. So it really like comes down to you put in your CV and then people ask when, and you can have an answer that is convincing that you did this for an important reason rather than just add a check mark on your CV.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be careful about how you plan and what you're gonna do. One thing that I hear a lot, because I have like almost 100 people in my course plus hundreds of people who come and ask me questions, oh, I don't have research, I'm not a good candidate. Who cares that you don't have research?
I had zero research when I applied. I have 2 years of clinical experience, so I have zero research.
Who cares, And I had research because that was my strong thing, but I had 0 days of clinical experience, like I was saying. So not the perfect, but the strong candidate can come in so many different ways, so many different ways. And the beauty about the US, because it's not just exam that you have your grade and the best grade go to the next level, next round. It's like they pick you based on several different things. Sometimes the program directors will like to get different people. So if they get this person with the research background, this one with the clinical background, this one with the leadership background, this one who supports the ADA or do stuff like that. Do you guys have any idea how important this is? That's huge. This other person, it's a very selfless person who helps. It's like all different things that can make a great group. So the ideal candidate comes with so many different faces. A very common thing in Brazil that's different than US. In Brazil, it's a stable job and pays fairly well to be in the army, military, Air Force, Navy, or what in the US would be called community health centers. So a lot of people want to work there. Well, pretty much not many people want to do this kind of job in the US. It's not many. The vast majority want to go to private practice. Why? Because it pays less. You're going to stick with the basics of dentistry. You're not going to do like those bridges and implants and this and that. So not many people want to do this community health service, Army, Navy, and stuff. Most of people who do that, let's just face it, it's because they got a scholarship to go to school, they pay back, they end up staying there, or because they can retire early. Usually that's the situation. Well, this people that do this in US, they are seen with very, very great eyes because they honor a lot Army, Navy, they honor a lot this kind of things here. So I get people in my course like, I don't have anything in my CV. I just been in the Army for 20 years. I don't have anything else. I'm like, nothing. I mean, look how many ranks you went up. Look at the leadership. Look at like the commitment. Look at the so many things that you have that you don't even know, you know? So take this and make a great statement about that. And you are a great candidate. You just don't know about that, you know? So these are like cultural differences. I'm sure Venezuela may be different too, but like some things that we do in one country here is different. We don't realize the importance of this, you know?
We have to be a little bit more advocators of ourselves and recognize our values, our strengths, also being humble and honest about our weaknesses,
Yes.
because we get into that path, you're right, of thinking, oh, it should be research or it should be this, and I don't have that. So people start thinking on the ideal candidate, like if it looks like one type of person. But you're so right. Program directors create a group and they want to try to really fill up different aspects. And every year, the truth is that every year the pool of applicants is different, right? So you don't really know who are you competing with. So you don't even know if what you're bringing to the table is what they need. And at the end, I still believe it's a matter of match. So I know even when many programs go through a process of match, which it has to be mutual. And I always tell people you have to try to apply to programs that also make sense for you, that you make sense for them, but they make sense for you, because that's going to increase your chances to be accepted. Or have somebody like that that have been in the military applying to a program where they have no outreach programs or they don't have access to community health centers or anything like that, then that person might not be the strongest candidate for that type of university and so on. So I agree with you. I think there are ways that people can work on themselves to show themselves better. And that preparation, as you said, I think 6 months will be the minimum to be able to prepare accordingly and even draft your CV. You have the CV in terms of the experiences, but you don't even have it written in a way that is appealing, in a way
Yes.
that is going to be pulled out like, I want to bring this person.
And people think they're gonna do this overnight, and it's like, no, 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 no. This is gonna take a while, buddy. Personal statement. Oh my goodness, personal statement is like, whew, that takes a while.
We don't write
Take
anything in Spanish. I feel like we might write for history classes and things like that, but we don't write an essay. We don't write our feelings or our
Yes.
thoughts or any of that. So I think even the learning curve for us is even more uphill and a little bit steeper because of that. But learning progress. So I think it's people just need to the progress. So reaching out the end of the time that we set up to talk, Leo, I want to ask you if you could go back in time. And I know this is always an unfair question because people generally are happy with their decisions. They don't want to change a thing. But if you could go back in time and make one thing different, or if you could take one of those foreign trained dentists right now listening to this that are going to struggle, if you can give one piece of advice, either to your young self or to this young person right now thinking of coming to the United States, what advice would it be?
One piece of advice. Oh, that's a tough one. I think my advice, I think that actually fits for me. You know, one of the mistakes that I made is what we are just talking about, the preparation. I underestimated the preparation process, even though I have been studying for a long time how to become a dentist in the US. I didn't realize how long things were going to take. In certain steps, I'm like, well, I'll have time to do this later. Um, and simple things like submitting my CV, not my CV, my transcript for evaluation by ECE. A very tiny little thing that took longer than expected, and that was a problem with my name, and that led for me to not being able to take the boards, and that led for me to lose a whole year of application because of one tiny little thing that just took longer than expected. And I was like, well, I can get this done. And I couldn't. And I lost a whole year of application, and I could be a dentist a year sooner. So my main thing to tell people is don't underestimate the amount of time that's going to take you to go through this process. Preparation is key. And go back to the beginning of the interview. You're going to remember me saying like, time is money. Okay. And in the US, if you lose a whole year working as a dentist, you basically lost a lot of money. You know, it didn't come out of your pockets, but it didn't come into your pocket either. So my mistake, and I try to teach people this, is don't underestimate the process. It's very long, it's very time consuming, and they will not go smooth. I guarantee you that. You're gonna have tons of hiccups. Be prepared. Have a plan A, B, and C.
That's excellent. I'm glad that you shared that. I feel many people go through the process or even see the things from outside and see us who have accomplished whatever it is, small or big, and they see us like somebody, oh, they never had a challenge. Oh, everything was so smooth for them. Oh, they have their parents paying. So they really make a lot of assumptions that things were not difficult. So I like to sensitize those and bring up those issues. Imagine you lost a whole year. I mean, it happens to all of us. I couldn't.
Was very painful. And if I can add one more thing, I was just thinking about one more thing. Be humble, okay, when you come to the US. I mentioned in the beginning I worked as a research assistant. I was a dentist. Average dentist in the US, care to stay, I think, $150,000 a year they're going to be making. Okay. I was a dentist, graduated from Brazil, but still a dentist. I came to the US and I worked as an assistant making $10.40 an hour. Anybody working at McDonald's was making the same amount that I was or more. And I was a doctor working for that much money. But it was not the money, it was the experience. So be humble. Plenty of people who come here, I don't want to work as a dental assistant. I'm a doctor, you know. I don't want to do this. I have a PhD. I'm not going to go to a school to do research. I should be a professor. One step at a time. Be humble, and then you get there. That's another very important thing for people to keep in mind. You know, we always start from here. It doesn't matter where you are in your home country. You come here, you're here, and then you pull your way up.
We're still immigrants at the end, and we're building our lives here, like building our professions as a reflection of that. So those are all great advice as well. Leo, thank you so much for your time, your expertise, sharing your story, and being so honest, open, and generous with the information. I will leave all the contact information for those interested on finding more about your course and your professional pursuits. I know that you have all that available. And thanks again for your time and for inspire other international dentists with your career and path.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here. I was really, really happy with the invitation, and I'm also want to thank you for volunteer time with this program that you're doing, because this can help so many people. You know, and you taking time away from for your family to be doing this for everybody. That's really nice of you. Thank you for doing that too.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Have a very, very good day. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.